Do you have a child that is super chatty at home, but when they go to school, they are stuck, they are frozen, or they're unable to communicate? Why does that happen? After more than 20 years supporting children, families, and schools, here is what I've learned. Children don't struggle to make progress because parents and schools don't care. They struggle because we often speak different languages and we focus on different goals. And that's why I always say, let's look underneath. In this video, I'm going to explain 3 things. First, why I created my school guide. Then why and what I've learned creating personalizing school plans for many children over the years. And then what I believe every parent in every school deserve access to the same roadmap. So we need to stop guessing and we can help children feel free to communicate. So let's get started. What I always say is we need to speak the same language. That's number 1. I've lost count of the numbers of meetings I've sat where everybody around the table wanted exactly the same thing, which was to help your child or the child. But everybody was talking about something different. The parents were describing anxiety and fear. The teacher was talking about participation and friendship. The teaching assistant was saying, oh, this seems fine, and they do most things. And someone else was maybe focusing on speech. But actually, what I feel is there is nothing wrong in that, but they were simply looking at different pieces of the puzzle. One of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years is that progress begins with everyone starts speaking the same language. That's one of the reasons why I created this guide. The very first section doesn't jump straight into strategies, but instead I wanted to explain selective mutism and communication anxiety through a different lens. Not as a child who won't speak, not as a child who's choosing silence, but as a child whose brain doesn't feel safe enough to communicate. And that shift changes everything when we look at the brain. Because once we understand anxiety differently, we then stop asking, how do we get this child to talk? And we start asking questions, what does this child or this child's brain need to feel safe enough to communicate? That question leads to a completely different support. So let's look underneath. This is probably the biggest change in my own clinical practice. Earlier in my career, like many therapists, I was looking much more at speech. I am a speech therapist, but now speech is only one small part of the picture. When I visit a school or work with a family, I am asking very different questions. Where does the child already feel safe? When do they communicate without realizing it? What happens during transitions? How do they ask for help? Do they eat at school? Can they join in a group activities? What happens if the teacher asks a direct questions? And how does their body respond when they feel anxious? So here they all are. Because before we choose a strategy, we need to understand the child and therefore the brain. That's why the guide includes practical observation checklists, not because we love paperwork, but because good support starts with good understanding. You'll find ways to gather information before introducing the strategy so that parents and schools are working from the same picture rather than making assumptions. And once you understand what's happening underneath, the child's behavior starts to make sense. So we want to go from guessing to a clear plan. So one thing I hear all the time is, oh, we have tried lots of things, Anna. And then when I ask, well, what those things were, and they were, I do feel that they were often good ideas, but they were not connected. One adult encouraged, another waited, another one rewarded, another child answering for their child, or they were avoiding questions altogether. And everybody's trying, but nobody is following the same roadmap. And that's why another important part of the guide is helping school creating SMART target, not list of 20 goals, usually one or two really important ones. So why SMART? Specific, measurable, achievable, repeatable or relevant to the child, and reviewed over time. Because if we don't know exactly what success looks like, how do we know if we're making progress? I want to share with you something practical, not just theoretical. So one thing I promised myself when I was creating this guide, what that really just needed to look at something, yes, I can use it. So parents don't feel overwhelmed, teachers don't feel overwhelmed, and the document just sits inside your drawer. So throughout the guide, you will find practical classroom ideas that can be used immediately. Teachers' language that reduce pressure rather than increasing it, meeting templates, planning pages, observation tools, idea for preparing transitions. I also included simple activities that can be built naturally into the school day within the class, nothing complicated, nothing that makes the child stand out, but just practical ideas to help children feel safer in their environment when they're in already, because supporting isn't about finding the perfect strategies, but is about creating the right conditions. So for many years, I created these plans individually. Every child was different, every school was different, every family was different, but something kept happening. Although every plan looked different, the principles never changed. The language never changed. The structure never changed. Therefore, the roadmap never changed. And everything eventually I found myself asking, why should this only be available for the family who can afford it or can work with me on a one-to-one? Parents deserve to understand this. Teachers deserve to understand this. And all the other professionals deserve practical guidance. And children with anxiety and communication, they really need a team around them that they speak the same language. So I decided to bring everything together in one guide, not because every child needs the same strategies, but because every child deserves adults who understand the same principles. So if there is one message that I'd love you to take away from this video, is this: children don't make progress because somebody finds the perfect strategy. They make progress because the adults around them create the right conditions. When parents in school speak the same language, we stop measuring their success only in speech. When we start looking underneath, that's when children begin to feel safer, and that's when the brain feels safe. Communication then has the opportunity to grow. If you would like to explore this approach in more details, you'll find the link to my school guide in the description below. And my hope is that it becomes a resource that you can use together with the school, or whether you're a parent or a school or a professional. So then everybody is working toward the same goal. If you have enjoyed this video, I'm absolutely sure you're going to love the next one, which you will find it right here. And finally, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you to every single person who has subscribed, commented, and shared all of my videos. It genuinely means so much to me, because my mission has always been bigger than helping children speak. It's about helping adults understand anxiety, understand the brain, and understand when we are kind to the brain, then we create the safety it needs. And when children feel safe, their communication has the opportunity to grow. So until next time, keep those small steps, because small steps build strong voices and powerful mind.